I found out the guy I'd been flirting with online was someone I already knew in real life on a Tuesday night, while standing in my kitchen in sweatpants, holding my phone in one hand and a half-dead houseplant in the other. The worst part? I didn't find out because he told me. I found out because he sent a photo. Let me back up. For the past 3 weeks, I'd been talking to this guy named Felix. We matched on a dating app late one night when I couldn't sleep and was doom scrolling instead of dealing with my life. His profile was low-key but confident. No shirtless gym pics, no fake deep quotes, just a crooked smile, messy dark hair, and a bio that said, "Probably overthinking this. Same, dude." Our chat started casual, the way all good ones do. Dumb jokes, complaints about work, a shared hatred of voice notes. But then it shifted, slowly, naturally, into flirting that didn't feel forced. The kind where you reread messages before replying, then pretend you didn't. Felix was witty, a little guarded, and way better at subtle flirting than I was. He'd say things like, "I feel like you'd be trouble in the best way," and somehow make it sound effortless instead of cringy. I liked that he didn't rush anything. No immediate jump into anything physical, no pressure to meet right away. Which was good, because I wasn't exactly in a rush either. I'm Julian, 27, chronically online, and painfully self-aware. I work a job I don't hate but don't love, live alone in a decent apartment, and tell people I'm open to dating when really I mean terrified of getting attached to the wrong person again. So flirting from a safe digital distance? Perfect. Felix and I talked every day, morning texts, late night conversations that drifted from stupid memes to oddly personal confessions. He knew about my last breakup. I knew about his weird relationship with his dad. It felt easy, too easy maybe. Still, we avoided specifics. No last names, no workplaces. No, where exactly do you live? Questions. It was unspoken but mutual, this little bubble where nothing could get complicated. Until it did. That Tuesday, I was in my kitchen trying to revive a plant I'd already accepted was probably dead. Felix had been unusually quiet all evening, responding slower than usual. When he finally texted, it was just, "Felix, can I send you something kind of stupid?" I smiled at my phone.me. Now I'm curious. Go on. 3 dots. Then the typing stopped. Then started again. My phone buzzed. It was a photo. Not a nude. Not even a thirst trap. Just a mirror selfie. Felix standing in what looked like a bedroom, phone half covering his face, wearing a familiar gray hoodie. And my stomach dropped so hard it felt like my body forgot how gravity worked. Because I knew that hoodie, I'd seen it dozens of times. I'd borrowed it once. My mind went blank, then flooded all at once. Same crooked smile. Same faint scar near his eyebrow. Same stupid dimple on the left side of his face that I'd pretended not to notice before. The guy in the photo wasn't just Felix from the app. He was Felix, as in Felix who works in the same building as me. Felix who grabs coffee from the same place every morning. Felix who I've made awkward small talk with in the elevator at least 20 times. Felix, my real-life acquaintance. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, thumb hovering uselessly. He hadn't said anything yet, just sent the photo. Like he had no idea what he'd just done to me. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe it just looked like him. Maybe I was projecting. Maybe. Then another message popped up. Felix. I know we said no face pics yet, but I figured it was time. If this weirds you out, I get it. I laughed once, sharp and breathless, alone in my kitchen. Oh, it weirds me out, I muttered to myself. Just not for the reason you think. Because now I had a choice to make. Either pretend I didn't recognize him, or admit that the guy I'd been slowly falling for online was someone I already knew and had been avoiding thinking about for a long time. And judging by how fast my heart was racing, there was no way this was going to stay simple. I didn't reply right away. I just stood there, staring at Felix's face on my phone like it might blink or change into someone else if I waited long enough. My kitchen felt too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath with me. The logical thing to do would have been to say something immediately. Hey, funny coincidence, we actually know each other. But logic wasn't really invited to this situation. Because the truth was, I'd noticed Felix long before the app. We weren't friends. We weren't strangers either. We existed in that weird gray area where you recognize someone's footsteps in the hallway but don't know their favorite color. Same office building, different companies, same coffee shop, same elevator at least twice a week. He was always polite, a little reserved, eye contact that lingered half a second too long, then broke. I'd clocked him as attractive immediately, then mentally filed him under not available for reasons I couldn't fully explain. Maybe because he seemed straight. Maybe because I didn't want to get my hopes up over someone I barely knew. So yeah, I'd noticed him. What I hadn't noticed was that he'd apparently noticed me too. My phone buzzed again. Felix. Julian? You still there? My chest tightened at my name. It felt more intimate now, knowing who he really was. I wiped my palm on my sweatpants and finally typed back, .me. Yeah, sorry, just processing. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Felix. Okay, that doesn't sound great. I exhaled slowly, then decided to stop being a coward. Me. Do you ever take the elevator around 8:45 in the morning? There was a pause. Longer this time. Felix. Yeah? Why? My heart started racing again. Me. Gray building. Corner coffee shop downstairs. Bad elevator music. Another pause. Then, Felix. Wait. Just that. One word. I imagined his face in real time, that slight furrow between his brows when he was thinking. I'd seen it enough times in passing. My phone buzzed again. Felix. Holy shit. I laughed. A nervous, breathy sound. Me. Yeah. A full minute passed. Then, Felix. You're Julian. Not are you. You're. Me. Guilty. I half expected panic, awkward apologies. Maybe even him ghosting me out of sheer embarrassment. Instead, he sent, Felix. Wow. Okay. I did not see that coming. I leaned against the counter, relief and adrenaline mixing in my veins. Me. Same. For what it's worth, I promise I wasn't stalking you online. That got a reply almost immediately. Felix. Kind of disappointed if you were. Would have made this more dramatic. I snorted, tension loosening just a little. Me. Trust me, this is dramatic enough. There was another pause, but this one felt different. Not shocked. Thoughtful. Felix. Can I be honest? My stomach flipped. Me. Please. Felix. I recognized you way earlier. I stared at the screen. Me. You what? Felix. Not right away, but after a few days. Your jokes. The way you type. And yeah, your face pic from the side? I was like, no way. My pulse spiked. Then why didn't you say anything? His reply came slower this time. Felix. Because I liked you, and I didn't want to ruin it. That landed heavier than I expected. I thought back to every elevator ride where we'd stood too far apart. Every polite smile. Every almost conversation that never went anywhere. And all this time, we'd been opening up to each other, just not in the same place. Me. So you knew and kept flirting with me anyway. Felix. Yeah. Me. That's a little evil. Felix. I prefer bold. I laughed, genuinely this time. The knot in my chest loosened even more. Me. You know this makes things complicated, right? There was a pause, longer. When he replied, the tone felt different. More grounded. Felix. Yeah, but it also makes them real. I swallowed. Because he was right. Online, it had been safe. A bubble. Now there was no hiding behind screens. No pretending we didn't run into each other in real life. And the scariest part? I didn't want to go back to pretending. Me. So, what happens now? For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then my phone buzzed. Felix. Next time we're in the elevator, we stop pretending we're strangers. My heart skipped. Felix. And maybe we finally grab that coffee together. On purpose. I smiled at my phone like an idiot. Me. I think I'd like that. Downstairs, somewhere in the building we both shared, an elevator dinged. and for the first time, I found myself hoping he was inside it. The next morning, I woke up already tense. Not the bad kind, no dread, no anxiety spiral, but the kind where your body knows something is coming before your brain catches up. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Felix's messages from the night before, like they might change if I looked at them again. Next time we're in the elevator, we stop pretending. Easier said than done. I got ready slower than usual. Changed my shirt twice, brushed my teeth like I was preparing for a date instead of a normal workday. I told myself it was ridiculous. Felix and I already knew what the other looked like, already talked every day. This was just context shifting. Still, when I stepped into the hallway, my heart started pounding. The elevator doors were open at the end of the hall. Empty. I hesitated for half a second, then walked in and hit the button. The doors slid shut with a soft thud, and the car started descending. Floor by floor, I told myself not to be disappointed if he didn't get on. There was no guarantee our schedules would line up. They usually did, but usually felt fragile now. Then the elevator slowed. The doors opened on the 7th floor. Felix stepped inside. We locked eyes instantly. No polite nod this time. No pretending we were strangers who happened to share oxygen twice a week. Just pure, unfiltered recognition, and something electric underneath it. "Hey," he said. It was the same word he'd used 100 times online. Somehow it sounded completely different out loud. "Hey," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The doors closed. The elevator hummed softly as it moved again. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Not awkward silence, charged silence. The kind where you're both acutely aware of the space between you, of how close is too close, of how easily that space could disappear. Felix broke first. So he said, glancing at me with a half smile, "Guess we're not pretending anymore." I let out a small laugh. "Guess not." He shifted slightly, turning his body toward me instead of facing forward. It felt intentional. Like a choice. "Can I say something kind of embarrassing?" he asked. My stomach flipped. Now I'm worried. "I always hoped you were gay," he said, then quickly added, or at least not painfully straight. I laughed, loud enough that it echoed slightly in the elevator. "Wow. Bold, told you," he said, smiling wider now. "You?" I shrugged. "I always thought you were unavailable. In some way I couldn't name." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that tracks." We reached the lobby. The doors slid open, but neither of us moved right away. People waited outside, and reality rushed back in. Felix gestured toward the exit. "Coffee?" I checked my watch. I had time. I always had time for this, apparently. "Yeah," I said. "Coffee." We walked out together, side by side, the morning light spilling through the glass doors. The cafe downstairs smelled like espresso and baked sugar, the usual background noise of our mornings, except now it felt like a set we'd stepped into on purpose. We ordered, stood a little too close while waiting, shoulders brushing once. Neither of us moved away. So I said, once we had our cups and found a small table by the window, "Did you really plan to just never tell me?" Felix stirred his coffee, thinking, I figured eventually one of us would slip up, like I'd send a photo from my desk, or you'd mention something too specific. "And yet," I said, lifting my cup, "here we are." "Here we are," he echoed. There was a beat. Then he looked at me, really looked at me. Not the casual glance from the elevator, not the cropped photos from the app, something slower, more deliberate. "You're exactly how I imagined," he said quietly. My chest tightened. "Good or bad?" "Very good," he said without hesitation. I felt heat creep up my neck. Same. Outside, people passed by. Inside, time felt suspended, like this moment existed outside our normal routines. Felix leaned back slightly, still watching me. "So what are we doing, Julian?" I didn't dodge the question. I said slowly, "we're seeing what happens when online chemistry meets real life." His smile softened. I was hoping you'd say that. We clinked coffee cups lightly, like it meant something. Like a beginning. And as I watched Felix take a sip, eyes still on me, one thought settled firmly in my chest. This wasn't a coincidence. It was timing. And it was only just getting started. If you'd asked me a week earlier what dating Felix would look like, I probably would have imagined something dramatic. Big conversations, awkward confessions, maybe a messy moment where one of us freaked out and bolted. Instead, it started quietly. Too quietly, honestly. We didn't kiss that first morning. Didn't even hug. We finished our coffee, talked about work like normal people, and walked out of the cafe together like we hadn't just detonated a small emotional bomb between us. But everything was different. The next few days felt like living in a split-screen reality. Online, Felix was still Felix. Quick replies, dry humor, late-night honesty. In real life, he was suddenly present, a little closer in the elevator, less guarded, smiling at me like it was intentional, not automatic. And I was hyper-aware of him. The way he tapped his fingers against his cup when he was thinking. The way his voice dropped when he said my name. The fact that he always waited half a second to see if I'd walk with him out of the building. On Thursday night, he finally crossed the line we'd both been circling. Felix, want to do something that isn't an elevator or a coffee shop? I smiled at my phone.me. That sounds suspiciously like a date. Felix, only if you say yes. Me, I'm saying yes. We settled on drinks. Casual. Low pressure. The kind of plan that let you pretend you weren't overthinking every detail. I got to the bar 10 minutes early anyway. Felix arrived right on time, wearing a dark jacket and that same gray hoodie underneath. He spotted me immediately, his smile slow and unmistakably real. Hey, he said again, like the words still mattered. It does, I replied, standing. This time, there was no awkward hesitation. He leaned in and hugged me, brief but warm, his hand pressing lightly against my back. It lasted maybe a second too long. I felt it all the way down my spine. We ordered drinks, found a quieter corner, and talked. Really talked. About the app. About recognizing each other. About how weird it was to know someone in two different ways at once. At first, Felix admitted, it felt safer online. Like I could be more honest. I nodded. Same. Real life has consequences. He smiled at that. Yeah. But also, rewards. There it was. The thing humming under everything. As the night went on, the space between us shrank. Our knees brushed under the table. His hand rested near mine. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat from his skin. At one point, he leaned in and said quietly, "Can I do something?" My heart kicked hard. "What?" "This," he said, and closed the distance. The kiss was soft, careful, like we were both checking to see if the other would pull away. Neither of us did. It deepened naturally, unforced. His hand slid to my wrist, thumb brushing over my pulse. I tasted whiskey and something warm and familiar that felt dangerously right. When we finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine for a second, eyes closed. So, he murmured, "Still complicated?" I laughed softly. "Yeah." "Worth it?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." Later, as we walked back toward our building together, the city quiet around us, Felix reached for my hand. I laced my fingers with his. For the first time, we didn't let go before stepping inside. And somewhere between the elevator doors closing and his shoulder pressing gently against mine, I realized something that scared me more than the coincidence ever had. I wasn't just flirting anymore. I was falling. Falling is quiet at first. No dramatic music. No clear moment where everything tips over. Just a series of small decisions that feel harmless on their own. Walking a little slower so you stay together. Replying a little faster than you mean to. Letting someone see you when you're tired and unfiltered. Felix and I started spending most evenings together without ever officially saying that's what we were doing. Some nights it was his place. Some nights mine. Sometimes we cooked. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we just lay on opposite ends of the couch, shoes kicked off, knees touching, scrolling on our phones while a show neither of us cared about played in the background. It felt domestic in a way that scared me. One night, about 2 weeks after our first real date, Felix came over after a long day. I could tell the second he stepped inside that something was off. His shoulders were tense, jaw tight, eyes a little too focused. "Hey," I said gently. "You okay?" He nodded automatically, then paused, then shook his head. "Not really." I closed the door behind him and waited. Didn't push. I was learning that Felix needed space before words. He dropped his keys onto the counter, ran a hand through his hair, and finally looked at me. "I don't do this," he said. "Do what?" "This," he repeated, gesturing vaguely between us. Let things get real, visible. I felt my chest tighten, but I stayed calm. "Okay," he exhaled. "I keep waiting for the part where this gets weird, or falls apart, or where I mess it up." I stepped closer, slow enough that he could pull away if he wanted. He didn't. "We can slow down," I said. "There's no rulebook here." He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "That's the problem. I like this. A lot." Something warm spread through me, chased immediately by fear. "I like it too," I admitted. He laughed softly. "That should not be that scary to hear." "And yet," I said. He reached out, thumb brushing the inside of my wrist, or my pulse jumped instantly. "You ever notice how we've known each other longer than we thought?" I nodded. "Yeah, feels like we skipped a few steps, or took them out of order," he said. "That night when we kissed, it wasn't cautious, it wasn't testing. It was grounding. Slow, sure, intentional." His hands settled at my waist like they'd learned the shape of me already. Mine slid under his hoodie, warm skin under my palms. When we ended up in my bedroom, it wasn't rushed. Clothes came off in pieces, pauses in between, eyes searching faces instead of bodies. Every touch felt like a question, every response an answer. After, we lay tangled together, sheets kicked aside, city light painting soft shadows across his back. Felix traced lazy patterns on my chest. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I used to think you were out of my league." I laughed quietly. "That's insane." "So is the fact that I almost unmatched you," he said. I turned my head to look at him. "You didn't." "Yeah," he said. "I thought it'd be safer." "Glad you didn't," I murmured. He pressed a kiss to my shoulder. "Me too." I lay there listening to his breathing, feeling the steady weight of him beside me, and realized something else, something deeper than attraction or coincidence. Felix wasn't a fantasy. He was here, real, complicated, choosing me. And that was the part that made my chest ache in the best and worst way at the same time. Because once something is real, you can actually lose it. And for the first time in a long while, I knew that losing this would hurt. Things didn't fall apart the way Felix feared. They also didn't stay perfectly smooth. Instead, reality crept in the way it always does. Quietly, through cracks neither of us noticed at first. It started with other people. Not jealousy, exactly. More like awareness. The first time it happened was in the lobby. We were waiting for the elevator when a guy from Felix's office, tall, confident, very obviously interested, walked up and greeted him with a familiarity that made something in my chest tighten. They laughed, talked about a project. The guy touched Felix's arm when he spoke. Felix didn't pull away. He didn't lean into it either. But he didn't look at me. I told myself it was nothing, that I was being stupid, that Felix didn't owe me anything beyond honesty, and he'd given me that. Still, when the elevator doors closed and it was just us again, the air felt heavier. "You okay?" Felix asked, quietly. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." He studied me for a moment, like he knew I was lying, but wasn't sure how to call me on it. That night, I lay awake longer than usual after he fell asleep beside me. I watched the slow rise and fall of his chest, the faint furrow in his brow even in rest, and wondered how much of him was still guarded. A few days later, the roles reversed. We were out at a small get-together with some of my friends. Someone made a joke about my dating history, and another guy, someone I'd casually seen months ago, smirked and said, "Guess you finally settled down, huh?" Felix stiffened beside me. Not much, just enough that I noticed. On the walk home, he was quieter than usual. You good? I asked. He nodded, then shook his head, mirroring me from that night weeks ago. I didn't realize how visible this would feel, he admitted. Being seen as someone's person. The word person landed between us. I stopped walking. He turned to face me. Felix, I said carefully, we don't have to define anything yet. I know, he said quickly. I'm not asking for labels. He sighed. I'm used to having an exit. I felt that one deep in my chest. Me too, I said softly. We stood there under a streetlight, the city humming around us, both of us holding the same fear from opposite sides. What if I said slowly, we just agree to be honest when it gets uncomfortable? He looked at me, eyes searching. You mean actually talk? I smiled faintly. I know, wild concept. He laughed, tension easing just a bit. Then he stepped closer, resting his forehead against mine like he had that first night at the bar. I don't want to run from this, he said. Even when my instinct says I should. I swallowed. Me neither. That night didn't end in fireworks or dramatic declarations. It ended with us, curled together on my couch, legs tangled, fingers absent-mindedly tracing familiar paths. But something had shifted. We weren't just floating anymore. We were choosing, again and again, to stay. And as much as that terrified me, it also grounded me in a way I hadn't felt in years. Because love, I was learning, wasn't just the rush. It was the willingness to sit in the discomfort and not reach for the exit. The night everything finally cracked wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No slammed doors. No cinematic breakup energy. It was a Sunday, the most dangerous kind of day. Felix and I were supposed to meet for dinner. Nothing fancy. Takeout, my place. One of those quiet nights that had become our default. I'd even cleaned, which should have told me I cared more than I was admitting. 6:30 came and went. At 7, I checked my phone. Nothing. No texts. No running late. By 7:30, the familiar knot started forming in my chest. Not anger. Worse. That old sinking certainty that I was an afterthought. At 8, my phone buzzed. Felix. Hey, I'm sorry, can we rain check? I stared at the screen. No explanation, no call, just distance. I typed, erased, retyped. Me. Everything okay? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Felix. I just need tonight to myself. There it was, the exit. I felt something shift inside me. Quiet, but decisive. Me. Okay, but we should talk tomorrow. The reply didn't come right away. When it did, it was short. Felix. Yeah, we should. He came over the next evening, looking tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. He didn't kiss me when he walked in. That alone told me everything. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. This feels familiar, I said softly. Felix exhaled, rubbing his hands together. I know. I waited. Let him find the words. I freaked out, he admitted. Yesterday, someone at work asked if I was seeing anyone, and He shook his head. I realized how long it's been since I let myself answer that honestly. And? I asked. And I panicked, he said. Not because of you. Because of how much you matter. My chest tightened painfully. I don't disappear when things get real, I said quietly. But I also can't chase someone who does. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. His eyes were glassy, jaw tight. I don't want to lose you, he said. Then don't, I replied. But that means showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Felix nodded. I spent my whole life keeping one foot out the door. I swallowed. You still doing that now? He stood, crossed the space between us, and knelt in front of me, hands resting on my knees. No, he said firmly. I don't want an exit anymore. I searched his face, looking for hesitation. There wasn't any. Okay, I said, voice shaking just slightly. Then stay. He leaned forward and kissed me, not rushed, not desperate, grounded, certain, and in that moment, something settled. Not the end of fear, not a promise of forever, but a mutual decision. Later, as we lay tangled together again, Felix pressed a kiss to my temple and murmured, "Funny how we met online first." I smiled into the pillow. Yeah, turns out real life was the harder part. He tightened his arm around me. Worth it, though. I closed my eyes, finally letting myself believe it. Because sometimes, the person you think is safest at a distance, exactly the one you're meant to meet face to face. It's strange how normal things feel once you stop waiting for them to fall apart. Months passed, not in a montage way, not neatly, but in overlapping days and half-finished conversations and quiet habits forming without either of us announcing them. Felix left a toothbrush at my place. I started buying the tea he liked without thinking about it. We argued once about something stupid. Dishes, I think. And instead of shutting down, he stayed. We talked it through. Neither of us bolted. That was new. One evening, we ran into each other in the elevator again, just like before. Same building. Same bad music. Except this time, Felix reached for my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. A woman glanced at us, smiled politely, looked away. Felix noticed. I felt him tense for half a second. Then he didn't let go. Later that night, we sat on my balcony, city lights stretching out below us. Felix leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "You ever think about how close we came to missing this?" he asked. "All the time," I admitted. "You almost unmatched me. I almost never swipe past 10-page M." He laughed, then went quiet. "I'm glad you didn't pretend you didn't recognize me," he said. "I would have kept hiding." I turned toward him. "You're not hiding now." He looked at me, eyes steady. "No, I'm not." The word boyfriend came later. Slipped out one night without ceremony. Neither of us corrected it. And sometimes, on mornings when the elevator doors close and it's just the two of us, I think back to that first photo he sent, how my heart dropped, how terrified I was. I thought knowing him in real life would ruin the fantasy. Turns out it did something better. It made it real. And this time, neither of us is pretending we don't recognize what's right in front of us.